In our last lesson, we talked at great length about the Russian Revolution of 1905. We learned that it was the Bloody Sunday that officially began this revolution of 1905. And following this event at St. Petersburg, massive strikes and demonstrations started happening throughout Imperial Russia. After a point, Tsar Nicholas II realized that he had to take some action in order to placate and pacify the masses. And so he now adopted a conciliatory approach. He allowed the creation of an elected consultative parliament which came to be known as the Duma. We learnt about the three imperial Dumas and for how long they lasted. Having talked about the Russian Revolution of 1905, in this lesson we will be focusing on another political event that did not just create confusion and turmoil in Imperial Russia, but throughout Europe. Now, by the year 1914, the European great powers had divided themselves into the Triple Entente that included France, Russia and Britain, and the Triple Alliance that included Germany, Austria-Hungary as well as Italy. Now this map shows you the Triple Entente and the Triple Alliance. The Triple Entente included Russia, Britain and France, and the Triple Alliance included Germany, Austria-Hungary and Italy. Now these were European great powers, as we just mentioned. They had huge amounts of resources and wealth. They were very powerful and influential in regional as well as international politics. At the same time, all these powers were driven by imperialist and expansionist policies. They wanted to extend their own control so as to make themselves even more powerful. And when the European great powers had divided themselves into the Triple Entente and the Triple Alliance, conflicts and clashes began between them. In fact, hostility was at its peak between these powers by this point of time. Now, there were many events that led to the First World War. We just learnt about the European great powers dividing themselves into the Triple Entente and the Triple Alliance. And hostility was at its peak or zenith between these European powers. They always wanted to outdo each other so as to increase their power and influence. And the final nail in the coffin was put by the assassination of the Austro-Hungarian heir, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, on June 28, 1914. This now aggravated the hostility between Austria-Hungary and Serbia. Why is it so? Because Archduke Franz Ferdinand was murdered by a Bosnian Serb by the name of Gavrilo Princip. Gavrilo Princip was only 19 years of age when he assassinated this Austro-Hungarian heir. Gavrilo Princip was immediately arrested, and what now followed was immense confusion and hostility, because Austria-Hungary now held Serbia responsible for the assassination of this Austro-Hungarian heir, Archduke Franz Ferdinand. And it is for this reason that many kinds of reconciliatory approaches between these two regions now failed. So the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand was the final nail in the coffin, as we just mentioned. And Austria-Hungary now waged or declared war on Serbia. Austria-Hungary's official declaration of war on Serbia on July 28, 1914 began the First World War. And when this happened, Imperial Russia immediately came to Serbia's defense. So Imperial Russia, as a matter of fact, got driven into this war that broke out between Austria-Hungary and Serbia initially. Well, these powers also did not know that this war was to turn out to be a world war. So we just mentioned this point that the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand was the final nail in the coffin. And following this, Austria-Hungary now officially declared war on Serbia on July 28, 1914. Now this newspaper cutting here shows you that Austria has chosen war. And when Austria chose to declare war on Serbia, Imperial Russia immediately came to Serbia's defense. And in this way, Imperial Russia also got drawn into this war that initially broke out between Austria-Hungary on the one hand and Serbia on the other hand. Well, initially no one knew that this was to turn out to be the First World War. So the First World War broke out on July 28, 1914. Now, because of various treaties as well as diplomatic relationships between these various countries, by August, Britain, Germany were drawn into this war. Italy initially decided that it would not become a part of this war. The First World War was fought between the Central Powers on the one hand and the Allies on the other hand. Now, the Ottoman Empire joined the war in the latter half of 1914. Now, the Ottoman Empire entered the war in November 15, and this Ottoman Empire spanned across several parts of Europe, Asia as well as Africa. And the Ottoman Empire's entry into this war with Germany, Austria-Hungary gave birth to the Central Powers. In the following year, in April 1915, Italy also decided to join the war. And so now was formed the Allies that included Italy, Britain, France, Serbia, Russia, and it was later joined by the US in 1917. So the Central Powers and the Allies fought some deadly battles, and these deadly battles costed the lives of millions of people. The First World War was fought from July 14 to November 1918. And in this series of deadly conflicts and clashes, both the sides suffered huge casualties. Now, having learnt about the First World War and how it broke out, let us now travel to the Russian Empire and learn about what was happening there during the course of the First World War. We learned that when Austria-Hungary had declared war on Serbia following the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, Russia had come to Serbia's defense, and with this, Imperial Russia got drawn into this international politics. Now, initially, World War I was popular among the Russians, but Tsar Nicholas II chose to not consult the main parties in the Duma. And it is for this reason that Tsar Nicholas II and his choice to not consult the main parties of the Duma brought him disfavor. So in this way, Tsar Nicholas II ceased to remain very popular during the years of the war. And this decreasing popularity was further accentuated by many other events that happened during this war. Now we learned that Germany was a part of the Central Powers that were fighting against the Allies, and the Imperial Russia was a part of the Allies. During the First World War, anti-German sentiments were speaking in the minds of the Russian masses. So much so that this city called St. Petersburg got renamed as Petrograd, because Petersburg is a German word. So can you understand how much hostility and anti-German sentiments had already spread among the masses by this time, that a city's name from St. Petersburg got changed to Petrograd. Before proceeding with this lesson, let me ask you a question. What was St. Petersburg renamed as when anti-German sentiments spread in Imperial Russia? Was it renamed as Belgorod, Moscow, Petrograd or Stalingrad? Well, the correct answer is Petrograd. Since Petersburg was a German word and anti-German ideas and sentiments were spreading among the masses, so St. Petersburg got renamed as Petrograd. Now, this was a time of peaking anti-German sentiments in Imperial Russia. And this was a time when a blot also came on the Tsar's family. How did this happen? The Tsarina, or the queen consort of Tsar Nicholas II, that was Alexandra Fyodorovna, was of German lineage. So for her German lineage, she was now detested and severely despised by the Russian masses. At the same time, there was another Russian mystic by the name of Rasputin. So this was Grigory Rasputin. And Rasputin was now becoming very infamous among the masses for his scandalous reputation. And Rasputin at the same time exerted great influence on the Tsarina. So the Tsarina, who was already being despised for her German lineage, was now being hated and scandalized even more for her close association with Rasputin. So together these now costed the Romanov dynasty its honor. So this now put a blemish or stain on the family honor of the Romanov dynasty. Between 1914 and 1918, many deadly battles were fought in due course of the First World War. Now, the First World War had broken Europe into two halves, which were the eastern half and the western half. Now, on the eastern front, warfare was different from what was being done on the western front. The western front was characterized by trench warfare. That is to say, the soldiers had dug trenches from the inside of which they used to fight the wars. But on the eastern front, the soldiers used to move over huge places where very deadly battles were fought. And these deadly battles costed a lot to the losing sides. So many battles were fought on the Eastern Front during World War I. And all these ended in huge casualties. Now, Imperial Russia at this point of time was not prepared to fight a large-scale global war, because the Russian army was not well trained like the other armies. And the Russian army was also not prepared. The Russian army was not properly equipped with artilleries and ammunitions. And it is for this reason that the Imperial Russian army now suffered humiliating defeats in Germany and Austria between 1914 and 1916. In fact, by 1917, many millions of Imperial Russia's army had lost their lives. Now, in due course of the war, it became very clear to Imperial Russian army that they were on the losing side, because they were suffering humiliating and crushing defeats on the Eastern Front. But Tsar Nicholas II believed that Imperial Russia would emerge victorious. But the Russian troops were defeated and they had to come back from several regions. Now, when the Russian troops were coming back, they implemented a flawed strategy of burning buildings and food crops. So, they tried to starve the enemy population to death. But this did not result in any kind of advantage for Imperial Russia. Because of this flawed strategy, now took birth around 3 million refugees in Imperial Russia. And it became very difficult for the imperial state to provide housing, food, employment to these 3 million refugees. So many people were now homeless. They were living on the streets in Imperial Russia during the course of the First World War. Another discussion that we had taken up in one of our previous lessons is that when the effects of the Industrial Revolution had reached several parts of Europe, those still did not reach the Russian Empire. Because until the end of the 19th century, Russia was predominantly an agricultural unit. So there were more peasants than factories and industries and factory workers and industry workers. So Russian industrialization did not really happen at a great scale till this point. And so the Russian limited heavy industries failed to equip the Imperial Russian army that was called the Russian steamroller with enough reserves of munitions. But on the other hand, the German army was very well equipped. They had access to great shells, transportation systems, arms and ammunitions, and before the German army, the Imperial Russian army fell short with their limited access to small amounts of arms and ammunitions. At the same time, Imperial Russia was not also able to get a lot of help and supplies from the other allied powers. This is because German U-boats had blockaded the Baltic Sea. So it is through this Baltic Sea that initially limited amount of supplies entered the Russian Empire from the Allies. But the blockade of the Baltic Sea by German U-boats sealed the fate of Imperial Russia. Only very limited supplies could now enter Russia. So the Russian army that was not well equipped, that did not have good supplies of arms and ammunitions, was not able to procure help from the other allied powers. Since the Imperial Russian army was not well prepared to fight such a huge scale war, they were losing out very instantaneously. Many millions of Imperial army lost their lives by 1917. And so it was now becoming difficult for Tsar Nicholas II to maintain the Imperial Russian army. So what happened at this point? At this point, paucity of soldiers compelled the Russian Empire to forcefully enlist able-bodied men in the Russian army. So all able-bodied men in Imperial Russia were now compelled to serve the Imperial Russian army. This now also had a severe repercussion. The Russian industries and factories were already faltering, and these men who were working at the industries and factories were now having to fight wars. So there was literally no people to work and have the machines, the factories, the industries running. So Russia was not able to get supplies from the other allied powers, and at the same time its own factories and industries were not able to produce arms and ammunitions for the army. So the army was suffering even more when this forceful enlistment began because of the paucity of soldiers. With large supplies of grains being sent to feed the troops, food shortages and riots became common in Imperial Russia during World War I. Because more and more amounts of grains and other food crops were required to feed the troops. And so the masses did not really have anything left for themselves. And riots are an obvious extension of food shortages. So people were queuing up outside the shops in search of bread or meat. So this is what Imperial Russia was brought down to during the First World War. So in this lesson, we could understand what was happening in Imperial Russia during the course of World War I. Now, though the Allied powers emerged victorious out of the First World War, this one great war took a severe toll on Imperial Russia. Imperial Russia was not able to get its supplies. Its resources and wealth were draining at a very fast pace. It was not even being able to feed its masses. Anti-German sentiments were spreading among the masses, and so the Tsarina and her honor also got stained. The Romanov dynasty, Tsar Nicholas II, became increasingly infamous and unpopular among the masses. Now all these things, this kind of a situation of confusion and political turmoil, economic crisis, further laid the stage for the Russian Revolution of 1917 to take place. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon. You can also register for free at DeltaStep.com or download the DeltaStep app to learn one-to-one with our amazing teachers, or to get access to all our 5,000 plus amazing videos as per your school syllabus. Master each topic with our adaptive practice technology. Get million plus questions with step-by-step solutions and unlimited mock tests. Get all your doubts resolved instantly. Learn via games and win amazing prizes like PlayStations and iPads. So at DeltaStep, learning is not just fun and easy, it's rewarding too. So register for free now.